After Itagaki's disappointing win, the next fight of the night begins, one where the winner earns a shot at the world title. First to step into the ring is the former WBA lightweight champion, Juan Garcia. He stands tall in the center, wearing a serious expression, his presence mirroring the tension in the crowd. Apo can feel Garcia's intense aura, recognizing it as something only a former champion could emit. Shortly after, the next challenger enters as the commentator hypes up his arrival. In steps the Grim Reaper, Mashiba Rio, clad in a jet black robe. He raises his hands high, then lowers one to his neck and makes a throat-slitting gesture. The crowd erupts in excitement, energized by the dramatic display. Apo takes note of Mashiba's confident presence and becomes convinced that he doesn't intend to lose this fight. Both fighters now stand in their respective corners, waiting for the bell. Mashiba stares into the crowd, his gaze fixed on someone. He performs the throat-slitting gesture once more, prompting the commentator to wonder if he's signaling the crowd that he's ready to kill. Kimura comments that this second gesture seemed even more intense. Aoki suggests it's just Mashiba trying to fire up the audience. Apo overhears and reflects that Mashiba might be acting differently because his sister is present, reverting to the overprotective, brotherly persona he's known for. However, when Ippo takes a closer look, he realizes Mashiba isn't looking at the crowd, he's staring directly at him. With only a few minutes before the match begins, the commentator continues building excitement, recounting the fighter's credentials. But Mashiba doesn't break eye contact with Ippo, ignoring the looming start of the match. Confused, Ippo wonders why Mashiba keeps staring and gestures for him to focus on the ring. In his thoughts, Mashiba cedes at Ippo, silently telling him not to sit so casually next to his sister and demanding he leave. Unaware of Mashiba's inner turmoil, Ippo shrugs it off, thinking Mashiba should focus on his opponent instead. But in Mashiba's mind, all he wants is for Ippo to go home. The bell rings, kicking off the match. The commentator proclaims that the Grim Reaper's scythe is ready to slice flesh, sever bone, and carve into the soul. Hearing this metaphor, Ippo is momentarily puzzled, wondering what he means by scythe. The commentator is referring to Mashiba's signature flicker jabs, however, though Mashiba chooses not to open with them just yet. Garcia slowly makes his way towards Mashiba, who stands waiting. In his thoughts, Garcia recalls hearing that he'd be witnessing the Detroit style here in Japan. But Mashiba's stance and approach tell a different story. Garcia interprets this as a sign of respect and steps in even closer. Ippo notes that it's rare to see Mashiba using such an upright stance. Still, he believes a cautious start is the right strategy, especially against someone of Garcia's caliber. The crowd watches in silent anticipation as Garcia continues his slow, deliberate march toward Mashiba. Ippo then points out Mashiba's reach advantage, noting that Garcia should be at his range soon, and predicts that Mashiba will start off with a long heavy left to get a feel for Garcia's range. His prediction is accurate, as Mashiba fires off a long, powerful left. Ippo watches carefully, wondering what Garcia is going to do. In a flash, Garcia slips past the punch and counters with an overhead strike. The impact snaps Mashiba's neck back, a moment that stuns the audience. But it turns out Mashiba had blocked the attack. Garcia notices that Mashiba's lead leg hasn't moved. Despite that, he managed to dodge from range by shifting only his upper body. Mashiba quickly returns to a tight guard. Ippo breaks down the exchange, noting that if Mashiba had used the Detroit-style stance, he would have taken the blow from temple to jaw. But by maintaining a raised guard, he was able to recover in time to protect himself. Garcia begins piecing together Mashiba's strategy, and deduces that Mashiba is keeping his distance to force Garcia into attacking one shot at a time. Examining Mashiba's frame, Garcia notes that most wouldn't guess he originally came from a lower weight class. Still, he believes he's found an opening in Mashiba's guard. Garcia rushes in, closing the distance. But Mashiba wants to stay away from Garcia, as he moves to the side. However, Garcia won't let him escape, and stays locked onto his target, cutting off every angle and tracking every step Mashiba makes. The announcer points out that Garcia has established control of the center of the ring. This tactic allows him to trap Mashiba and subtly butter out pressure here and there, conserving stamina while staying aggressive. However, if Mashiba continues this constant movement, it's only a matter of time before fatigue sets in. Garcia closes the distance again and throws a punch, but it's blocked. Ippo quietly admits to himself that Garcia is incredibly strong. Nearby, Mashiba's sister, eyes shut, asks Ippo what's happening. He responds gently, telling her that if things start going well, he'll let her know. Garcia then sends 2 jabs at Mashiba, who dodges them, but Garcia doesn't relent and unleashes a flurry of punches at Mashiba, who, again, blocks them all. Yet even without taking direct hits, the relentless assault is gradually wearing him down. Garcia continues to shift his body left, then right, mimicking the Dempsey roll to keep Mashiba off balance. Mashiba studies him closely, observing that Garcia's punches all come from the same launch point, but they vary in direction, straight or curved. Mixed among them are real punches and feints, making it even harder to predict. Mashiba also notices how Garcia keeps moving his head, making himself a constantly shifting target. Then, another barrage comes and once again, Mashiba blocks all of it. Something catches him off guard, the sheer speed at which Garcia steps in, and even his sloppier punches carry tremendous force. After that analysis, Mashiba tells himself to focus, as he continues to hold up his guard. Meanwhile, Garcia realizes that all Mashiba has to do is to lean back to get out of his reach. He assumed that since Mashiba used the Detroit style, he'd be an offensive fighter. But instead he has been keeping up a tight guard, which makes Garcia admit that Mashiba is a pain to deal with. Ippo urges Mashiba to take advantage of his superior reach, but suddenly, Garcia makes a quick move. Garcia starts rocking back and forth, making Mashiba wonder when and where will he attack from. Garcia then acts, aiming for a body blow, which Mashiba picks up on and blocks, so Garcia quickly shifts to the side, catching Mashiba by surprise, and aims for another body blow, but it's blocked again. However, Garcia swiftly follows up with an overhead punch that almost slips through Mashiba's guard. Suddenly, Garcia grabs and shoves Mashiba's hand away, which opens up his guard, allowing Garcia to quickly land a body blow and back away. Ippo was surprised at how easily Garcia got in so close, noting that he threw a series of lefts down low, showed a big right up top, then split his guard open to make it look like he was aiming for a right, and instead threw another left down low. Mashiba fires back with a counter to shake Garcia off, but Garcia quickly rocks to the side, dodging Mashiba's punch as he keeps up the pressure on him. Forced to retreat, Mashiba moves, knowing that if Garcia attacked from that position, he wouldn't have the reach to retaliate. Then, suddenly, Garcia closes the distance in an instant. Mashiba watches closely, finally noticing how Garcia can close the distance in a single movement. He didn't notice it at first because Garcia's punches stole his attention. Mashiba observes that when Garcia throws a punch, his front leg takes a huge step forward, then he draws his leg back in after a single movement. Garcia aims for another body blow from the side, and Mashiba blocks it. Garcia then goes around the outside to attack. But it was a feint, as the real blow follows immediately, hammering into his body. Mashiba realizes that if he attacks from a guarded stance, he'll be a step too slow, which leaves him wondering what to do now. Mashiba's physical and mental strength are being cut down little by little, as Garcia keeps up his attack. From the sidelines, Kimura shouts at Mashiba to use his legs, reminding everyone that he excels in fast-paced exchanges. But Aoki counters, saying Mashiba is running and striking at random, because he knows that Garcia isn't someone he can deal with easily. Aoki adds that the faster Garcia moves, the more it disrupts Mashiba's coordination between brain and body. At this pace, all Mashiba can do is plant his feet and watch, hoping for a missed punch and an opening to exploit. Ippo notices that Mashiba's guard keeps dipping lower, and suspects it's due to the repeated body blows. That's when Ippo understands Garcia's plan, realizing that he's targeting the body to bring down Mashiba's guard. And now, Ippo was certain the next blow will come from above. Ippo's prediction comes true, as Garcia launches a strike from above. But it's a feint yet again. At the last second, Garcia shifts to Mashiba's side and lands a brutal body blow. The unexpected maneuver shocks Ippo, while Mashiba reels from the impact, his body crumpling slightly as pain shoots through him. His head drops, leaving a dangerous opening, and Garcia immediately moves in to capitalize. But just as he prepares to deliver the finishing blow, the bell rings, and the referee suddenly steps in, stopping the punch. As Garcia returns to his corner, his coach tells him it was a strong start. Garcia nods but admits he had hoped to hurt Mashiba even more. He can see in Mashiba's eyes that he's not going to roll over so easily. He also adds that he has some weapons that he hasn't revealed yet. Ippo watches him closely, stunned by Garcia's calm breathing despite such an aggressive offensive. He silently admits he's never seen someone with the stamina to fight at full force for all 12 rounds. Then he looks at Mashiba, and is horrified to see Mashiba breathing heavily, clearly exhausted after only the first round. Mashiba curses Garcia under his breath, but his coach quickly cuts him off, telling him to save his energy and focus on recovering. Even so, the coach understands his frustration after realizing Garcia is far stronger than they had anticipated. Toho reflects on how the old Mashiba would have lost his temper and jumped into a slugfest, only to get demolished in the first round. He acknowledges that Ippo's advice to keep a strong guard helped Mashiba endure the onslaught. Toho then asks Mashiba a pointed question, asking if he felt the strength of the world level. He encourages him, telling that this isn't the highest point, and he should remember what he has accomplished so far, and believe in himself. That comment triggers a realization in Mashiba: this is just a preliminary match, the same stage where Ippo gave up. The real challenge lies far beyond this, of which the level of competition is on an entirely different scale. And yet, what shakes him most is the feeling of a deep, helpless gap in his ability to land a clean hit, a sensation he hasn't felt in a long time. Shortly after, round 2 begins. Mashiba suddenly remembers that he has in fact felt that hopeless sensation, remembering the time he fought Miyata. Miyata, watching from the crowd, wonders if this will be the end for Mashiba. Mashiba recalls the fight in his mind, noting that all his efforts were futile, because Miyata was faster, sharper and better in every way, causing him to feel that sense of hopelessness. But despite all the disadvantages, he still managed to win. Looking back on how he won, Mashiba smirks and remembers that he had stepped on Miyata's foot. He also started utilizing his unwritten rule where anything goes, in order to bring Miyata on his hands and knees. If he had managed to do that to Miyata, then he can surely bend the rules against Garcia as well, and win. With his plan set, he states that there is no need for him to fight under rules set by someone else. Round 2 continues as Garcia begins shimmying left and right, feinting with subtle movements. With a few quick steps, Garcia rushes towards Mashiba, throwing numerous jabs at his guard. Mashiba responds, but Garcia blocks and swiftly counters with a blow to the head and body, which Mashiba manages to block the punch aimed at his face, but the body blow connects. He then unleashes a rapid flurry, forcing Mashiba to raise his guard once again. But Mashiba has had enough of getting beat on, and fires back with an uppercut, but Garcia dodges it. Mashiba follows up with an overhead punch, but Garcia evades that as well, and counters with another body blow, making Mashiba's abdomen throb with pain. Ippo watches intently, impressed that Mashiba is unable to touch Garcia despite him being very close to him. He wonders what he would do if he was the one fighting Garcia. Miyata also thinks the same, wondering what he would do if he was in Mashiba's shoes. Meanwhile, Garcia remains focused, telling himself not to get overwhelmed and not to rush things. He knows that the moment Mashiba opens his guard, he'll end it with one clean strike. But even if that guard doesn't open, a gap will appear eventually, and when it does, it's over. Garcia tells himself he came to Japan for business and he's not letting go of his ticket to face that man again, stating that he's going to reclaim the title that was stolen from him. Mashiba's irritation begins to bubble over, but Ippo silently hopes he doesn't lose his cool, not when the finishing blow could be just one mistake away. He observes that when Mashiba raises his guard and holds his stance, he's hard to hit, since his long arms protect his vital areas well. Even his opponent should be confused on how to proceed, so he should just bear it until an opening presents itself. Suddenly a loud impact echoes through the arena, as Garcia lands a clean hit. Mashiba tries to respond, but Garcia immediately follows up, smashing him in the face and sending him crashing into the ropes again. The bell rings, signaling the end of round 3. The damage is starting to pile up on Mashiba. In his thoughts, Mashiba questions himself, wondering what is he waiting for, and why hasn't he done it yet. He knew he had so many chances to elbow Garcia in the head, knee him in the thigh, stepped on his foot and grounded into the canvas. He urges himself to act, in order to show Garcia what he's made of. To Mashiba, losing is unforgivable, and now he's ready to execute his plan. Ippo notices something alarming, noticing Mashiba has dropped his guard. At first, he assumes it's due to fatigue, that his arms must be heavy from the constant barrage of hits. But then a chill runs through him. As Ippo watches more closely, he realizes what's actually happening, and his eyes widen, understanding what exactly Mashiba is planning to do. Mashiba states that if all Garcia does is beat on him, then eventually, he'll figure out his timing and the rhythm of his punches as he closes in. He swears he'll show Garcia what true agony feels like. If he can't land a punch, then so be it, he'll throw something else. He vows to make Garcia taste humiliation, shame, disgrace, hopelessness, despair, regret, and darkness. But what Mashiba truly means is that he'll make Garcia experience what hell is like. He then adds that whatever happens in this fight, happens, and he no longer cares about the outcome. Mashiba is also determined to not let Garcia leave this ring in one piece. As Miyata continues to silently observe the match, Ippo yells out in support of Mashiba, telling him that he can still do it, that he can still fight back. Finally, he gathers himself and shouts with all his strength, Mashiba can still do it. The audience hears Ippo's cry, and decides to follow along with the support, as they start cheering loudly for Mashiba. With the energy of the arena shifting, Mashiba initiates his plan and attempts to step on Garcia's foot. However, he hesitates and misses his stomp. But in doing so, he managed to plant his foot in a spot that allows him to hop out of the corner that Garcia had him trapped in. He pauses for a moment, questioning himself as to why he couldn't bring himself to do it. In this moment of clarity, Mashiba reflects on the idea that there is nothing more unforgivable than losing. He recalls how, after his loss in the fight against Sawamura, his license was revoked. Despite that, he realizes now that he was never truly alone. Suddenly, he becomes aware of a loud noise erupting throughout the stadium. At first, he's unsure of what he's hearing, but then it becomes clear it's the crowd, chanting his name in overwhelming support. Hearing the audience's cheers, Mashiba is determined not to betray them. He knows that if he throws out a careless punch, he'll be countered, and he also knows how dangerous opponents can be if they can slip through his punches. Mashiba then clenches his fists, stating he has learned fighting styles in people's hearts, thanks to boxing. He then decides that he will exhaust his entire career, and with all that he's learned, he will surpass this great obstacle in front of him. Then, he'll take everyone with him to the world. For as long as he can remember, he's been lashing out at the world's cruelty, but now, that rebellious phase ends. Garcia notices that Mashiba has dropped his guard once more. He's angled in such a way that his chest is visible, leading Garcia to believe he's fully committed to a defensive stance. But then, Mashiba unexpectedly launches two flicker jabs, but Garcia slips past them with ease. Miyata observes that Mashiba can't reach Garcia's chest, making it extremely difficult to land effective punches. Mashiba continues to fire off flicker jabs, but Garcia keeps weaving through them, gradually closing the distance with little effort or hesitation. Ippo points out that with Mashiba's arms stacked like that, every left he throws has to start from the elbow to shoulder, which Garcia is reacting to it, and dodges in advance. Miyata notes that Mashiba's left punches are like spears. But he wonders if it's standard for world-level fighters to be able to dodge those punches. He admits that if he was in the ring, he would have thrown a counter, while Ippo admits that he would have rocked his body to the side. However, they both remind themselves that this is Mashiba they are talking about. Suddenly, Garcia steps in and fires left and right punches, but Mashiba blocks them. He then realizes that Garcia's weird steps let him close the distance in an instant, and now he can't shake him off. Sensing an opening, Garcia presses forward again, aiming directly at Mashiba's chest. Both Ippo and Miyata are convinced that Mashiba has no options left. Mashiba has figured out the timing, he could step on Garcia's foot or perhaps land an elbow, but just as he's about to act, he notices something. Garcia continues to push forward, determined to reach his target. As he charges in, he spots that Mashiba has raised his guard once again, this time, even higher. In doing so, Mashiba has left his body wide open, and Garcia decides to punish him for it, and commits to breaking through. But just as Garcia goes for Mashiba's body, a sudden blow crashes into his face. The strike lands clean, drawing blood. The audience is stunned by the abruptness of the hit, but no one is more shocked than Garcia. As he retreats, he wonders where that punch came from, describing it as fireworks that came out of nowhere. Garcia begins stumbling backward, away from Mashiba, as Mashiba's coach watches with a knowing smile. He quietly thanks Ippo. Without his advice, Mashiba wouldn't have hardened his guard in that way. The punch Mashiba landed was born from that very defense, emerging as a short uppercut. Miyata analyzes the technique. He explains that Mashiba had raised his long arms and tightened them into that high position, effectively concealing the punch. From where Miyata sat, he could see it unfold, but for someone standing directly in front of Mashiba, the punch would have been impossible to spot, let alone anticipate. It would feel like something suddenly shot straight through their body. Ippo agrees, noting that even though the punch landed cleanly, a normal fighter couldn't have thrown it from that angle. But Mashiba, with his long arms and broad shoulders, can make use of such an unorthodox movement thanks to his unique build. Ippo was so impressed by that technique that it gives him goosebumps. They first needed to confirm it, but there was no other way to do so without taking any damage, but Mashiba remained patient and persevered. Still, the coach reminds himself that the fight isn't over yet. Garcia continues backing away, dazed, until he finds himself near the ropes. He tells himself not to get worked up over a minor concern and plans to move out of Mashiba's range to regroup. Ippo observes Garcia's actions, noting that he immediately withdraws without panicking and starts thinking of countermeasures, exactly what one would expect from a former world champion. However, while Miyata would have echoed Ippo's thoughts, the reality is quite different. We then see Garcia with a terrified expression on his face as he watches something swing back and forth. It's revealed that Mashiba has now transitioned into his flicker jab stance, snapping his arm back and forth at an insane speed. Miyata questions Garcia's earlier calculation, wondering if he's truly out of Mashiba's range. Suddenly, Mashiba unleashes a flurry of flicker jabs, forcing Garcia into a defensive posture. He's stunned that Mashiba's range has reached all the way to where he stands. Ippo provides an explanation, noting that Mashiba is leaning forward with the hitman style, a stark contrast to the traditional guard stance he had been using earlier. This new stance is fast, flexible, and extends his reach. Garcia continues to struggle with Mashiba's seemingly impossible range as the flicker jabs rain down on him. However, he recognizes the type of punches Mashiba is using. At this level, Garcia knows that such punches aren't uncommon, since he has faced plenty of sparring partners who throw similar techniques. Blocking one of Mashiba's punches, Garcia begins shutting down each and every jab that comes his way. Still, he knows he can't avoid them all, so he plans to go for Mashiba's chest. Suddenly, Garcia hammers down on Mashiba's glove and delivers a body shot. Mashiba shifts back into a defensive stance as Garcia starts stepping in, believing that no matter how solid Mashiba's guard is, it will eventually crumble. As Mashiba returns to his guard, Toho's mind flashes back to when he first taught Mashiba the stance. When Toho demonstrated it, Mashiba questioned how he was supposed to punch while so curled up. He pointed out that with his guard tight and arms glued to his jaw, it seemed impossible to land a punch while all scrunched up. He even admitted that the last punch he landed was out of pure frustration. But Toho told him that he couldn't see the punch coming and urged him to do it again. Hearing that left Mashiba a bit confused. Still, Toho told him to stop talking and just do it once more. As Garcia closes in, he can't shake the feeling that something hidden is waiting to strike him. The paranoia creeps in, forcing him to fall back. His sudden retreat confuses both the audience and the commentators. In that moment, Garcia realizes Mashiba was baiting him. He now understands that if he steps in too far, a punch he can't see will be waiting. He makes the decision to settle the fight in mid-range, as he rushes in again, and Mashiba waits for him to come. The two exchange rapid punches, neither landing a decisive blow. Both Kimura and Aoki question which of the two fighters has the advantage at this range. Meanwhile, with her eyes closed, Kumi nervously asks Ippo what's happening in the fight. Ippo tells her that, for now, it's an even match, 50-50. Toho notes that, earlier, Mashiba couldn't land a single clean shot on Garcia. But now, he's putting on a world-class performance on equal footing. The round eventually ends, and both fighters return to their corners. Toho congratulates Mashiba, acknowledging that he remembered what Ippo told him, and encourages him to stay confident and go for the win. Meanwhile, in Garcia's corner, his coach asks him what he came to Japan for, reminding him that this isn't even his main goal and that it's time to end the fight. Shortly after, round 7 begins. As both men take their stances, Garcia tells himself that he has somewhere he needs to go, demanding that Mashiba let him shove right past him, while Mashiba realizes that Garcia now has a reason to retreat, so he plans to open this path himself. Garcia steps into mid-range as Mashiba begins to flicker his arms. He fires off 2 flicker jabs, but Garcia evades them and steps in even closer, landing a counter straight to Mashiba's face. Kimura points out that Garcia threw a cross along the inside of the flicker, while Aoki points out that Garcia has now adapted to Mashiba's rhythm. Miyata adds that Garcia has always been a master of counterattacks, and now, Mashiba can no longer throw reckless flicker jabs. The pressure reverses, and it's no longer a 50-50 exchange. Mashiba stumbles back from the counter but quickly regains his footing. However, Garcia keeps up the pressure, sending more strikes at Mashiba. While he keeps up his attacks, he warns himself to not step in too far, and not lose focus. Mashiba then retaliates with a flurry of flicker jabs. He senses that Garcia is wary of getting into a close-range fistfight, so he decides to strike first. One of Mashiba's flicker jabs is blocked, and he finds himself both impressed and frustrated that Garcia refuses to take a clean hit. He remembers what Ippo told him, stating that Garcia's defense is incredibly strong. Suddenly, Garcia lands another punch, forcing Mashiba to raise his guard momentarily. Garcia then blocks Mashiba's attacks, and is now sure that he has total control of the mid-range, so he can now land punches without having to step in too carelessly. Meanwhile, Mashiba prepares to shift the momentum by force if necessary, something he's managed to do before. Garcia lands yet another clean hit. Mashiba quickly retaliates with a punch of his own, but Garcia blocks it with ease and counters swiftly. Mashiba tries again, only to be blocked once more. Mashiba then realizes that he can't do anything to Garcia. In his mind, he screams for Garcia to hit him, and Garcia obliges, landing a sharp strike to Mashiba's jaw. The crowd begins to shout, urging Mashiba to fight back. His sister, overwhelmed, can barely watch as he's repeatedly struck. Frustrated, Mashiba wonders if Garcia is underestimating his ability to break through his guard. But before he can even launch a punch, Garcia lands another shot to his face. Everyone starts to wonder why only Garcia's punches are landing, while Mashiba can't seem to touch him. Garcia explains to himself that at this range, neither of them can land body shots, so it becomes a battle of headhunting. He reveals his strategy, block from the side and ride along Mashiba's sloppy punches. After landing another counter, Garcia plans to mix up his attacks, going high, then low, and a body shot to take out the remaining stamina Mashiba has left. He knows that he needs one more punch to the body to end this. But he also knows that if he steps in too deep, that hidden punch, the one Mashiba used before, could come back. So, Garcia decides not to rush and instead stays focused on the head. Kumi nervously asks Ippo again if Mashiba is okay, but Ippo can't give her a straight answer. He looks toward Mashiba with a worried expression, wondering if the world title is still within reach for him. Ippo then awkwardly grabs Kumi's shoulder and tells her that Mashiba is strong. Shortly after, Mashiba receives another punch to the face, and this time he gets stunned by the punch. His mind begins to spiral, as he tries to come up with a solution to defeat Garcia. In his desperation, he screams out for someone to tell him how to win, because he desperately wants to. Then, suddenly, he hears a voice, someone shouting that he can still win. It turns out to be Ippo. As Mashiba's head falls back from the blow, he catches a glimpse of Ippo and Kumi in the corner of his eye. Mashiba suddenly jolts upright and, in his mind, tells Ippo to shut up. If Ippo's going to be that loud, he might as well offer some useful advice. Upon saying the word advice, Mashiba remembers something. Without hesitation, he throws a punch aimed directly at Garcia's body. Garcia sees the incoming attack and remains confident it shouldn't be able to reach him from that distance. At that moment, Mashiba recalls a conversation he had with Ippo. He asks Ippo why he came to visit him, to which Ippo admits that he feels out of place. He then asks Mashiba if he's familiar with Garcia's style. Ippo explained that Garcia holds his guard very high, leaving his body exposed. So, if there's ever going to be an opening, it would be for a body blow. Just as Ippo once explained it, Mashiba executes it, landing a solid punch to Garcia's body. Garcia is left stunned that it actually connected. Miyata observes that Mashiba's long frame allowed him to land the punch from that distance. After the flashback, Mashiba bluntly thinks to himself that Ippo shouldn't give him orders. Still, he begins targeting Garcia's body again, striking repeatedly as Garcia reels from the pain. With Mashiba's attacks finally landing cleanly, the crowd begins cheering for him once more. Even as he fights back, Mashiba questions why he has to follow Ippo's exact advice. He admits to himself that it's frustrating and, frankly, annoying. He throws another flicker jab to Garcia's body. Now that the tide has turned, Mashiba swears that he'll tear Garcia apart from the inside, landing yet another body shot, which Garcia barely manages to block. Not wanting to suffer more punishment, Garcia attempts to retreat and regroup. But Mashiba refuses to let him escape, catching him with a flicker jab to the jaw just as he starts to move. Garcia quickly realizes he needs to find a safe zone. But Mashiba is already watching his every move, his arms snapping back and forth in anticipation. Garcia tries to sidestep and retreat further, but Mashiba chases him down with relentless pressure, not giving him a single breath of space. Garcia knows that staying in the center ring means being within 5 steps of Mashiba's firing range, and now, there's nowhere left for him to run. Mashiba then unleashes a flurry of punches at Garcia, who tries to endure them, but one slips through his guard and cracks him in the face. With his escape failing, Garcia knows he needs to stop Mashiba's left hand, but his insides are so battered, he can't even throw his right. Desperately, he tries to regroup and find some space. But he notices that he can't move backwards, since he's near the ropes. And with Mashiba cutting off his angles, he can't move to the sides either, causing him to panic, as he desperately looks for a safe zone. He spots an opening. The moment Mashiba swings his arm, his right side becomes vulnerable. Garcia quickly steps into that spot, hoping to catch his breath and give his damaged insides a moment to recover until the bell rings. But suddenly, Mashiba uppercuts him with a guard punch, an attack Garcia had forgotten about. His jaw snaps upward, head thrown back and completely exposed. Mashiba sees his chance and prepares a final punch to end the fight. As the punch approaches, Garcia thinks to himself that he wants to return to the title ring. He doesn't care if his insides tear apart, he wants his punch to land, carrying every ounce of his determination. In a flash, Garcia dodges Mashiba's blow and counters with a devastating uppercut that knocks Mashiba back. Garcia declares that he put everything into that punch, and now he wonders if Mashiba has the resolve strong enough to withstand it. Mashiba's mouthpiece flies into the air from the impact. Ippo watches in awe, realizing this is the reserve strength of a former world champion. Mashiba begins to fall, his consciousness slipping by the second. Kumi cries out for her brother, hoping he can still hold on. In this fading state, Mashiba envisions himself sinking beneath the sea. Though he's barely conscious, Garcia can tell he's still hanging on and prepares to end it once and for all. As Kumi watches, Mashiba falls into a flashback. He and Kumi are visiting their parents' grave. He tells her not to cry, promising that he will take care of her. He tells himself he won't accept this fate and will never trust anyone. The flashback continues. Kumi defends her brother from thugs, shouting that he's the only family she has left. Mashiba reflects that, even though Kumi is his little sister, the one he's supposed to protect, she's the one who always ends up protecting him. He also admits that the only thing tying her to that house is him, the good-for-nothing brother. Mashiba then states that he will not accept it anymore. He vows to become better, so Kumi can finally live in peace. He recalls Kumi once saying that as long as there's a chance he could get hurt, she'll stay by his side. Mashiba realizes the only way for Kumi to leave this darkness and step into the light is if he becomes someone worth being proud of. Until then, he won't even accept himself. In the vision, he raises his hand from the water, and in reality, it's his body responding, launching an uppercut that lands cleanly on Garcia, taking him by surprise. As Garcia stumbles back, he acknowledges the overwhelming will Mashiba has displayed. Even as someone who stood at the top of the world, Garcia knows this kind of tenacity is beyond normal. However, he still manages to hang on. Garcia knew that Mashiba had that tenacity, but he states that he's not the only one. Miyata observes Garcia's posture and notices that he's setting up a counter. Ippo sees it too, and warns Mashiba not to fall for it. Mashiba presses forward with another strike. Garcia tries to dodge, but the punch smashes into his face. Mashiba declares that until he becomes the older brother Kumi can be proud of, and until he becomes world champion, he won't accept himself. Garcia staggers on his feet, and Mashiba wonders if it's finally over. But then Garcia raises his guard again. Stunned, Mashiba wonders if this is some kind of joke, asking if everyone who clings to the world is like this. He knows he's at his limit. If he's going to finish this, it has to be now. Mashiba unleashes 3 flicker jabs to Garcia's face. But he can feel his body giving out, so he plans to put everything in this final assault. He lands a powerful uppercut, then follows it with a straight right, sending Garcia reeling. Mashiba rushes in to finish it, but the referee steps in to stop him. The referee holds him back, but Mashiba struggles against him, shouting that he can't stop now, he's determined to be the world's best brother. And then, finally, he sees it, Garcia has gone down. The fight is over, as the crowd erupts into cheers, celebrating Mashiba's hard-fought victory.